What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka AA Ron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, welcome back to another episode, the final episode of Black History Month, final episode of February, before we start getting into springtime. I mean, the season's winding down. There's about 22, 23 games left of the season, so I mean, it won't be much longer. We're talking about playoffs and second round, conference finals, and finals. So soak it all in because it's going by quick. But this is the Season 3, Episode 15 edition of Another Turnover, 65th episode overall, and we are powering through. So let's get right into it. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of today's show, I got to give you the final time Black History Trivia. So this is a fun one. So if you can think about it, I'm gonna say that, like I have done before, I'm gonna say the question, and then I will give the answer at the end of the show. So stay tuned. Make sure you finish the episode to find out the answer. But who is the NBA player who has played the most games all time? So total games all time in the NBA. Who has done that? Like I said, answer will be revealed at the end of the show. But let's get right into it. So today's episode, I basically want to get into 5 different storylines that are going into the end of the season. Like I said, we've got just a hair over 20 games left. I mean, we have a good idea of right now what the playoff picture could look like, but it's subject to change. There are still a lot of moving parts with teams who are not currently in the playoffs. So let's talk about it. So there's 5 things I'm going to point out. This is actually, got to give credit to ESPN. They talked about some of the storylines going into the final part of the season. And if you know me, if you followed the show for a long time, I love a good storyline. That's why I love the NBA so much. NBA is all about the storylines, and at least in my opinion, it is. But first storyline we have going into the end of the season, we've talked about it already, but you have Kevin Durant now playing for the Phoenix Suns. So obviously in that blockbuster trade, like we talked about, Kevin Durant traded away from the Brooklyn Nets, now playing for the Phoenix Suns. So nobody really, well, I shouldn't say nobody saw that coming, because he asked for a trade to Phoenix over the summer, didn't get it, decided to stick it out with Brooklyn, but then Kyrie got traded, and it was reported that Kevin Durant privately went to the team and was like, all right, like, try to get me a trade, preferably to Phoenix, and Brooklyn was willing to part ways with their star. But Kevin Durant is expected to make his debut for the Phoenix Suns next Wednesday. I don't know who they're playing next Wednesday. I'm assuming that game will probably be on ESPN. But he is expected to make his debut after his injury. The injury he had, I think it was a leg injury. I think it was a knee injury, if I'm not mistaken. But, I mean, Phoenix, they have a nice starting 5. Like Cam Walker and I talked about on the trade deadline episode, they have a nice starting 5. You've got Kevin Durant, you've got Devin Booker, 2 guys who can get you 30 plus pretty consistently every night. You've got DeAndre Ayton, who is a very solid big. And then you have Chris Paul, an aging but still very capable point guard in the NBA to facilitate all that offense. Now with Kevin Durant there, he really doesn't have to do any scoring at all, much of any scoring, but he'll probably end up getting more opportunities because the defense will be so focused on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So should be pretty interesting. But the big question before I get into the big question, if the playoffs were to start today, if we take a look at the standings, which I have here, so right now Phoenix is sitting at 5th in the West, so that means they would play the 4th seed, which right now would be the LA Clippers. I would love to see that. I would love to see that later on in the playoffs. That would suck to be a first round matchup, because those are 2 pretty solid rosters and 2 pretty solid teams. But right now, if the playoffs were to start today, the Clippers would play the Suns. But like I was saying, the big question that I have, big question going into the tail end of the season, even if Phoenix were to win it all, if let's say the Suns win the championship with Kevin Durant and whatnot, would that positively impact Kevin Durant's legacy? Personally, I would lean towards probably wouldn't. I mean, sure, it would probably add to, it would add to his legacy because, all right, he's got 3 championships. He more than likely would probably be Finals MVP of that series. Could go to Devin Booker, potentially could go to Chris Paul, but his whole knock has been that he has not won on his own team. Obviously, he went back to back with the Golden State Warriors, and he was the best player. I don't want that to be misinterpreted. He was the best player in that series, in both series against Cleveland, where they won in 17 and 18, if my memory serves me correctly. And, like I said, he won Finals MVP, but the Golden State Warriors belong to Steph. Like, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, they are all, drafted. They are guys, that the organization has invested in. And Kevin Durant really did feel like a hired gun, like a mercenary, his 3 years in Golden State. So those two championships, yeah, it's great that he won them, but I don't think they hold nearly as much weight as, say, Dirk Nowitzki's championship in 2011 with the Dallas Mavericks, or Dwayne Wade's first championship in 2006 with the Miami Heat. So if Kevin Durant had won in OKC, I would say his legacy would be somewhat cemented. He's still going to go down as one of the top, I'd say 15, top 20 if you're, depending on how you look at it, one of the greatest players of all time, obviously. But yeah, I don't see a championship in Phoenix really moving the needle positively for his legacy. But hey, that's just my opinion. That's how I feel about it. But let's move on. Let's move on to the second storyline that I want to get into for the remainder of the season. You have LeBron James and the Lakers making their playoff push. So, like we've talked about on the trade deadline episode, the Lakers kind of retooled at the deadline. They got some shooting. They got younger. I was taking a look at their roster. Like, I like the fit of this roster. Obviously, it's a very small sample size, what we have seen so far, but I really like the fit. I like D'Angelo Russell on that team, facilitating the offense, and can get you some buckets. I like Malik Beasley, Hachimura, solid, pretty decent, solid perimeter defender. Jared Vanderbilt as well. You got guys who can hit open threes. So I like the fit of this roster. Now, I still want them to lose, but like I said, I like the fit of this roster. They do have a pretty tough schedule coming up. As I was doing the research for the show for today, they do have a pretty tough schedule for the remainder of the season. They got Golden State twice, who is trying to make their own playoff push, obviously with Steph Curry being in and out of the lineup for a good portion of the season. Dallas Mavericks, who are trying to hold on to their 6th spot so they don't have to be in the play-in. You've got Memphis, who is vying for a number 1 spot in the in the Western Conference. They are, Denver's got a little bit of a lead. Denver's got about a 5-6 game lead on them right now. But I'm sure Memphis would want home court advantage throughout the entire, Western Conference. But then they're also playing Phoenix. Phoenix is also making, like I said, their playoff push. They're 5th right now. They've had some injuries. So the Lakers aren't going to have a cakewalk for the remainder of the season. They've got 23 games to go, and they are 3.5 games back from that 6th spot, which currently, like I said, is Dallas. So could they make the playoffs? Of course they could. I mean, 3.5 games back, 23 games, that's enough ground to make up, but they got to string together some wins, and some other teams got to start stringing together some losses, obviously. But the big question I have for the Lakers going into the latter part of this season, if they're all healthy, let's say hypothetically they still miss the playoffs, should LA consider blowing it up? Should LA consider potentially splitting Anthony Davis and LeBron James going into the offseason this year? If I'm on the Lakers front office, if I'm in the Lakers front office, I would definitely consider that option. But that's contingent on if they're healthy and they still fail to make the playoffs. I would definitely consider all of my options. If I'm Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, whoever other Lakers executives there are, I would consider it. I would consider saying, all right, how much, more time do we want to invest in Anthony Davis and LeBron? It's been, how many seasons they played together now? They got him in 19, I think. So 19, they won in 20. They lost in the first round in 21. Missed the playoffs, last year 22. This is the 5th season, I believe, with the LeBron and Anthony Davis, pairing. So I would gauge the market for Anthony Davis. Obviously, he has been injury prone, but at least see what, would move the needle for another team to make a big trade for him. I would obviously talk to LeBron James. If they start shopping Anthony Davis, probably should talk to LeBron James first. Not that they have to okay it by him, but at the same time, We know how much power LeBron wields. That's why he's nicknamed Le GM. So I would definitely, if I'm the Lakers front office, talk to LeBron about it first before they make any significant changes. But an aging LeBron, an injury-prone Anthony Davis, it's time to consider all of your options. I'm not saying get rid of them right away. I'm just saying I would definitely entertain the idea. If they miss the playoffs, I think that's an option that they should put on the table. But we shall see. All right. Next thing that I wanted to get into, next storyline going into the final part of this NBA season. I talked about it multiple times. I think I just talked about it on either last week's episode or the week before last. But it's Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic's potential three-peat for MVP, something we have not seen since 1986 from the great Larry legend, Larry Bird himself. But like I said, we discussed this already. As of right now, in my opinion, he's in the lead for MVP. Denver's got the best record. I think he's averaging a triple-double. I should have had his stats pulled up here. Let me confirm that. His stats for the season. So he is averaging... Here we go. He's averaging 24.7 points per game, 10.1 assists, 11.5 rebounds, shooting 63% from the field and 39% from three-point range. So, I mean, yeah, he's averaging a triple-double as a center. And they're actually playing the Cavaliers right now, and he's got 8 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. So, still the second quarter. But I really do think the way the media has talked about him so far, the way he has played, like if he keeps up this triple-double production and the Nuggets finish with either the 1 or the 2 seed, I think he takes it. I think he takes it again. Everybody loves Jokic. I don't really, hear anybody say anything bad about him for the most part. I love watching his game. So I think Jokic, as of right now, barring any injuries, knock on wood or whatnot, I think Jokic goes back to back to back. So I think that'd be pretty cool. I would love to see it. But you have some players that have some cases, for MVP as well. Like Giannis. Giannis is averaging 31.8 points per game, 12.2 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. Absolutely incredible numbers. Very similar numbers to his MVP seasons. And Joel Embiid, 33.1 points per game, 10.2 rebounds per game, averaging, he finished second. Did he finish second 2 years in a row to Jokic the past 2 years? I think he has. So, I'm sure he wants to win it. Philly has had some injury struggles and whatnot, but Embiid has a case, I would say. And then I would put Tatum and Luka in there for cases as well. Tatum is the best player on the best team, so typically the best player on the best team gets, pretty good consideration for MVP. And Luka Doncic is Luka Doncic. He's just sensational pretty much all the time. Almost sensational to a fault because sometimes he's too sensational and has to do too much with that Dallas team. But obviously I'm speaking before Kyrie Irving got there. But yeah, history could be made. We could see our first back-to-back in almost 40 years, right? My math? Yeah, almost 40 years. So crazy stuff. But all right, next storyline we have going into the final part of the season. You have Luka and Kyrie. Luka, who I just mentioned. Luka and Kyrie, how is their dynamic going to play out in Dallas? So obviously they've only played a couple games together so far. I think they played the night. I think they played the Spurs tonight, so Mavericks will probably win that. They only played a couple games together so far. They looked pretty good together, but they did go, I think they went 0-2. Obviously, very small sample size, not enough to really gauge how the rest of the season is going to go. But I'm not worried about the Dallas Mavericks offensively. What I'm really worried about is just their defense. They really don't have any lockdown defender or a defensive identity, I would say. They don't really get up in you. They're not really super physical. So I'm a bit concerned for them with, their defense. They can score points probably with the best, the best of the best in the NBA. But big question I have for the Dallas Mavericks, how will Luka Doncic respond to, playing with a ball-dominant guard? Obviously, this is something that is new and unprecedented for him in his career. To say, I got a guy who can get me 30 pretty much consistently every night and pretty efficiently, and I don't really have to initiate anything. He's never had that. Obviously, that's brand new territory for him. And like I said, the games that I watched that Kyrie and Luka played together, they look pretty good. It did look a little like, all right, your turn, your turn. So I'm curious to see how how Jason Kidd will kind of, work Kyrie more into the offense. But, two ball dominant guards, obviously, they need the ball in their hands to create. I think it could potentially work to an extent, but I really just do think Dallas is going to need to address their defense before they are considered a legitimate contender. I know obviously it was a different roster, but I know they made the conference final last year. That was, I think, more so of an epic collapse on Phoenix's part than it was amazing play by the Mavericks. No shade on the Mavericks, but yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how Luka is going to respond with another ball dominant guard, but we'll see. I mean, Mark Cuban obviously knows something that we don't know because he traded a good amount for Kyrie, and his deal is up in the summer. So I'm sure he got some sort of agreement to keep him in the fold for the foreseeable future. But all right, last thing that I want to talk about, last storyline going into the final games of the NBA season, the final 20 or so games. You have a new big three in LA. And by LA, I mean the LA Clippers have a brand new big three. You have Russell Westbrook, who returns to LA in a deal with the Clippers. He could potentially make his debut. You're listening to this today on Friday. But article from the AP says Russell Westbrook signed with the Los Angeles Clippers after he cleared waivers on Wednesday afternoon. The 9-time All-Star was waived by the Utah Jazz on Monday. He cleared waivers because no team has the salary cap space to take on the remaining $47 million he was owed on his expiring contract. So like I talked about just a little bit ago when I was looking at the standings, the Clippers right now are the 4th seed in the Western Conference, sitting at 33 games won and 28 games lost. Now, I was looking at the Clippers roster. I like the Clippers roster. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, obviously they don't play every game. They play every other game or every 2 games or so, but that's a story for another day. They added Eric Gordon. They also added Bones Highland, but then you got Norman Powell, Marcus Morris Sr., Robert Covington, Zubac, and then they also traded for Mason Plumlee as well. So, I like the Clippers roster. I think they can hang with the best of the best in the Western Conference. Even without Russ, I like this roster. I think he can really help with pushing the pace. Clippers do play a little bit slow from what I've watched. At least I think they play kind of slow. But I think he could help, distribute, getting the ball to the primary scorers being Kawhi and Paul George, and then their shooters. Eric Gordon's pretty much a knockdown 3-point shooter. Norman Powell, Marcus Morris Sr., Robert Covington can hit him as well, and Nick Batum's pretty decent, I would say as well. But I would trust Ty Lue to kind of get Russ in good position to be successful in their offense. He's I'm sure they're gonna have to work out the rotation for what they have. But I think Ty Lue is probably the best coach that Russell Westbrook can ask for at this point in his career, in my opinion. But big question I have for the Clippers. Did the Clippers really need to add Russell Westbrook? I mean, you probably know where I'm going with this. Like, when I was looking at the roster, I know they traded Reggie Jackson. They got, Mason Plumlee. They traded John Wall back to Houston, which, sidebar, that was cold-blooded, by the way, because John Wall just had he was on a podcast a few weeks back, maybe a month or so ago, talking about how terrible it was in Houston and how the young guys, they weren't playing hard and all this stuff, and how he would never want to play in Houston again. I'm paraphrasing. And they sent that man back to Houston. That was wrong. That was wrong. I don't know if John Wall's got waived at this point. I think he has. I think he's still a free agent, but I could be wrong about that, so please don't hold me to that. But like I said, did the Clippers really need to add Russell Westbrook? And I would, be more inclined to say they really didn't need to. I don't think Russell Westbrook really moves the needle at all for the Los Angeles Clippers. I don't think he makes them any worse, and I really don't think he makes them any better. Sure, they got rid of, Reggie Jackson and John Wall, so 2 of the point guards that they had. So they had to get a replacement, but, could Bones Highland, who you traded for as well, could he have ran their offense? I know he said in an interview, he's a pretty good playmaker or something along those lines. if I'm Ty Lue, I'm like, hey, like, why not? Why don't we give it a shot? But like I said, I really just don't think the Russell Westbrook signing for the Clippers really moves the needle for them one way or the other. It could potentially work, but Russ is gonna Russ, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that pretty much is all I've got for today. A little bit of a shorter episode here. We're hovering more closer to the 20-minute mark. But I'll give you the Black History answer to the trivia question that I had. So who is the player to play the most games ever in NBA history? And that player is none other than Celtics legend, Mr. Robert Parrish. Robert Parrish played 1,611 games in his career. Played for 21 seasons. Played from 1976 all the way to 1997. So he played for the Celtics. He played for the... Oh, yeah. He played for the Celtics and the... Oh, no, the Charlotte Hornets he played for. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, he played for the Celtics. He played for the Hornets for a couple seasons. And then he played for the Chicago Bulls. Won 4 championships, obviously the 3, 81, 84, 86 with the Celtics, and then in 1997 with the Michael Jordan-led Bulls. So I thought that was pretty cool, like for a player to play 21 seasons. I know LeBron's coming up next year will be his 21st season, I think. That's just an incredible stat, an incredible feat. I mean, this man, Wilt Chamberlain retired in 1973, only 3 years before Robert Parrish got in the league. And Robert Parrish played alongside against and alongside Michael Jordan. Think about that. Like, that's kind of wild. That's a long career. So mad props, mad respect to Mr. Robert Parrish. A record that I don't think will be broken. But hey, who knows? Let's see. What's LeBron at right now? I'm just curious. With most games played in NBA. I know LeBron is in the top 10 as of right now. LeBron James is 9th all-time in games played. He's at 1411. I mean, if he plays, he's about 200 games back. I mean, if he plays like 3 more seasons, then yeah, he could do it. We'll see. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you fine folks today. I appreciate y'all, as I always say every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you could do all the good things, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, follow on all social media platforms at Another Turnover, and I would greatly appreciate it. But I've got more wedding planning coming up this weekend. Could not be more excited to get it all done. It's coming up. It's coming up soon. But anyway, enjoy your weekend. Have fun. Take care, and I will see you next week.
Just too quick for it, peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort, this piss poor. I got too much I gotta tend to. Car payments and the rent due. Told y'all that I'm 6 foot, but with them